Joining us now to talk about this is Bryan Ma, Associate Vice President of Devices and Peripherals Research at IDC Asia Pacific. He is joining us from Singapore. So tell us, Bryan, what do you think of these results? Are you impressed?
Yeah, definitely. And certainly in light of all the news we've been getting about Apple over the past week about the antenna problems and all that kind of thing, I mean, I think certainly it's impressive and it's encouraging about what we're going to see coming forward, too.
Now, this is the first set of results that encompasses the introduction of the iPad. Does this kind of negate the argument that iPad sales would stunt growth in sales of its other products, like its PCs and its iPhones?
Well, if anything, I think when you look at the products, at least today, they're still very complementary to each other. And if anything, it helps to enforce this idea that there's an entire ecosystem, whether it is a dedicated PC, an iPad, or a phone. And from that perspective, I think we're going to continue to see more of that going forward. Is it going to potentially cannibalize sales of one or the other product? There may be a bit of an effect on the fringe, but I really don't think it's going to be a major issue.
We don't seem to yet be moving to that all-encompassing device then.
Yeah, well, so that's the thing, right? You can have a jack of all trades, but it doesn't necessarily do, a dedicated function as well as a dedicated device. And that's really what it comes down to. When you look at a dedicated computer, it's got a keyboard, the interface, the big screen versus a phone, which is small, it's portable, but doesn't necessarily have the big screen and the keyboard. Then you got something in the middle. So you can have multiple devices to suit multiple purposes.
Now, with the iPad, I mean, it's trying to create a market here, and Apple has referred to the pricing as very aggressive. Do you think in the future they're going to be able to increase pricing and increase their margins on this product?
That would be tougher. Obviously, there are a number of competitors that are expected to be coming down in the next couple of, not just quarters, but of course years. And from that perspective, a lot of these vendors are, of course, going to compete on price. They're going to try to crank down those prices, keep the margins tighter. Granted, Apple still can command a premium just because they are Apple. They've got that Apple brand name, but there is inevitably going to be pricing pressure in the next couple of years. I think they can enjoy it for now while they can.
Right.
As they come out with increased designs, sure, they can continue to try to charge higher prices, and they probably will be half successful at that. But there is going to be competitive pressure for sure.
How's it going to do in Asia? We've got the iPad going on sale in Hong Kong, also Singapore and New Zealand on Friday.
Yeah, we in fact just put out a forecast of the so-called tablet space by country out here in the region. And this year we're expecting about 1 million units here in the Asia region, excluding Japan. That forecast is actually looking a lot more conservative now in light of how successful the iPad is going to be. So it may very well be higher than that. Obviously, the key countries, like you mentioned, with Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, those are going to be key. But I think more importantly, to tie it back to one of the questions you were asking about earlier, as we look into next year and into the following years, we're going to see a lot of local vendors coming from China, Taiwan, Korea, building products and helping to push 2011 and 2012 into much bigger volumes.
All right, now tell me about this iPhone 4 and these antenna problems. I mean, how damaging is this going to be? We had HTC of Taiwan saying this morning that it's received 35% fewer complaints. It says that it has carefully designed and engineered its phones to get around this issue. So I'm wondering, did Apple make a big mistake here? Did they miss a trick, or is this all overblown?
Yeah, it's a bit overblown. I mean, obviously, we've reached a point where there's been a bit of mudslinging and that sort of thing, and it probably ideally could have been handled a bit better. But in the end, I don't really think this is going to impact Apple that much. Clearly, we already saw the earnings that have come out, and those are very encouraging. Their guidance looks very good as well, too. And if you look at still the sheer amount of momentum and interest in iPhone 4 these days, even if some folks are a bit distracted and might put off their purchase of iPhone 4, there's still going to be that core contingent of users that still say, you know what, I don't care. I still want it. I was going to use a case on it anyway, so the antenna problems aren't an issue. Arguably here in Singapore, we've got very good signal strength, so even if it is a bit weakened, I don't care. I'm still going to get it, and I think Apple's still going to be fine.
Bryan, we've got to talk about the shares. They're up 20% so far this year. Do you see much more upside?
Potentially. I mean, again, I'm not a financial analyst, so I wouldn't be able to go, comment too much on this. But I think if you look at the business as a whole, it is a case where they still have quite a bit of momentum going. Clearly, there are crazed fans for this Apple brand, and that's a huge asset that the rest of the industry is quite envious of. So there should still be quite a bit of potential ahead for them.
Very quickly, what's the next big product from Apple?
That's the million-dollar question. I'll bet you Steve Jobs is asking that question himself. But, I think he hinted to it as well that, there's still going to be good products coming down the pipeline. I think we'll have to see what gets unveiled in the next year.
Wait and see. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Bryan Ma, Associate Vice President at IDC Asia Pacific. Thanks so much for joining us.